Business Spotlight, brought to you by Cross Rhythms and Baba Baboon.
I'm Sonya Farrell and this is Business Spotlight in partnership with Cross Rhythms City Radio and Baba Baboon. Joining me in the studio this week, we're going over to driver risk management as we welcome Adrian Hide from Adrian Hide Consultancy. Adrian himself has 38 years experience, should I say, in this industry. Adrian, hello.
Hello there, Sonya.
How are you?
I'm fine and dandy, thank you. And you?
I'm fine and dandy too,
Good.
Adrian. I love saying that. Do you?
Yeah, it's a nice word, isn't it? Yeah. It's better than saying not too bad.
Not too bad. Fine and dandy. I can cope with that all day. And did you find the studio okay here at Cross Rhythms?
Absolutely fine, yes.
Brilliant. Now, I've just mentioned Adrian, 38 years experience within the industry of driver safety, risk management, all of that. But what does this actually mean to a business and why should it be taken seriously?
Okie dokie. So there are a number of reasons why driving for work should be taken seriously. The first thing is, if you think about an employee, it's probably the organisation's greatest asset. Mm-hmm. And if that person is off work, let's say due to a road traffic incident, then that's going to have some consequences for the business. But there's also a little piece of legislation, without going into too much detail and boring everybody, under the Health and Safety at Work Act, a business has a legal duty of care to manage that risk called driving. Mm-hmm. Okay, and possibly we'll explore in a little while what we actually mean by driving for work.
Mm. So just going on from that, actually, I will ask you now, when you say driving for work, so it's not driving to work, and when we also, however we say it now, driving for or driving to work, does that mean somebody who is doing a short commute to an office, say if they're in Stoke-on-Trent and they're going from Newcastle across the Dee Road, going into Burslem or something like that, or is it a more of a longer commute? What is the clarification on that? Right,
that's a great question actually, Sonya, and it's one that I have to go to great pains to explain to people that I work with, because a very common response to a question, a simple question, how many people do you have in your business who drive? The response to that is sometimes none. So I say, so you don't have anybody that goes on a training course then? Oh, yes, we do. You don't have anybody that goes to another site or another office? Yeah, we do. You don't have anybody in the office who runs an errand on behalf of the business? Yeah, we do. Well, actually, you have drivers then. So if you take the commute to and from a person's normal place of work, mm-hmm. so home to the office or home to the site and back, that is not an employee's responsibility. It's called the commute to work.
Okay. Right.
Everything else you do on behalf of your employer is work related and therefore is the responsibility of the employer. So for instance, you might travel into an office on a regular basis, but let's say on a Wednesday, you might have to go to a different office or a different site. All of a sudden, your commute changes. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that becomes a work-related journey. And that's when it starts to fall under that duty of care that the business owner has.
So how would, if a business is listening now,
yep.
And does it matter as well, I'm just going to add in here, what size the business is? Because I know you said there, if somebody's going out to do like an errand or something for work, so that could be like a small business, the owner of the business and an employer.
Yeah.
It could mean that. Does that also mean someone who's freelancing?
Yeah. So I think probably the best thing to do is, rather than us saying a business, let's say an organisation.
Yeah.
Because an organisation could be a commercial entity. It could be a charitable organisation. It could be an educational establishment. It could be a not-for-profit group. If they have people who are driving on behalf of that organisation, mm-hmm. then the legal duty of care kicks in. Now, just to get us slightly more technical, any business or any organisation that has 5 or more employees, mm-hmm. by law, they must have a documented health and safety program in place. Okay, right. Less than 5, you've still got to manage health and safety, but it just needs to be up here in your head. Mm-hmm. Whereas 5 or more, you have to document it. And once you start to get to that 5 or more, part of your health and safety responsibilities will be anything that it puts an employee at risk. And driving is probably one of the most riskiest things that we all do on a daily basis. So to answer your question, it's any organisation of any size, but it needs to be documented once you get to 5 or more people in that organisation. And if you have people who freelance, then you really want to be treating them as if you employ them from a health and safety point of view.
So it falls in as well to health and safety within an organisation.
Absolutely.
So how does the process work if there's somebody even in a new business now and they've started to employ, they're going up from that 4 to 5 employees? What would be the process in which they need to put in, whether it's policies or even that awareness for driver safety within that organisation?
Yeah, and I suppose that's where my 38 years of experience comes in, because you could turn to a website that is called the Health and Safety Executive. They're the people that police health and safety. And in there will be some guidelines that will say, managing workplace road safety, these are the things you need to do. So you see that list and you think, okay, right, I can see all this stuff. How do I do it? What does it look like? Who's going to do it? How do I do that on a daily basis? And that's where I come in. So one of my favourite expressions is, you don't know what you don't know. So at what point in a entrepreneur's business cycle, as they go from being a sole trader to employing 5 people, does that light bulb switch on that says, now we need to be thinking about employment law, health and safety, IT, security, driver safety? It doesn't. It's people like me that come along and go, hey, Mr. Business, did you know? So what it looks like is to have governance around that activity called driving. So things like, do we set a framework by which our employees can work from? So what are our rules for using a mobile phone whilst driving? What are our rules for long journeys that require a break? And how do we combat fatigue? Do we need to mandate they have an overnight stay? So we create this thing called a driver safety policy. Right. It's a rule book. Okay, it's your do's and your don'ts. And then there's a whole load of other stuff that sits around the periphery. So we need to understand the risks associated with everything that is to do with driving. So we create this thing called a risk assessment. So I would create a risk assessment that would then support the driver safety policy. Okay, we got those in place. What happens next? Well, might be a good idea if we tell our employees what we do, so they know what the rules are. Communication. Exactly. You know all about that, Sonya, don't you? Good communication. And how do we make sure that people adhere to those rules? So do we need to set up practices, policies, procedures, systems? So it's all of the stuff that helps you do what you need to do that makes driver risk management look good.
And when you're saying that, the communication side of things as well, if you're in an organisation, whether it's 5, 10 employees or hundreds of employees, what barriers have you seen with all the experience you've had in ensuring of getting that importance across to each and every member, not just the business owner, getting that message across that this is something which is imperative to not only the success of a business, but also the welfare of staff and employers as well? How do you get across that?
Yeah, I think it's very much an educational piece. I think the first thing I've got to do is to educate the controlling minds of a business that you have a responsibility in law to manage driver safety, but let's set that aside. Surely, as a responsible employer, wouldn't you want to do everything possible to keep people safe doing that activity called driving? It's a high-risk activity. Over a quarter of all of the road traffic incidents that happen on the road network today, tomorrow and yesterday will have somebody driving as part of their work activity. So that's a quarter. So if you think about it, if we wanted to address road safety in general, our target audience is employers, because a quarter of them are driving on their behalf. So once we've got the controlling minds of the business on board, to be honest, for me, that's the battle partly won, because they now will pave the way for the change. And the change is not massive. It's not massive at all. I think the buy-in will come from making sure we have an effective communication plan in place right from the word go. And it's things like, boys and girls, we're going to be working with the driver risk management specialists. We're looking to enhance the arrangements we already have. Even if they haven't, we're looking to enhance the arrangements we already have to do with driver safety, because we care about you and we care about your safety. This is what it's all about. And then we offer them the opportunity to give them some feedback as to what challenges they face. Because if they have a part to play in creating the rule book, then they're much more likely to sign up to it in the future. And then it's a case of a drip-free process. So once we've created the policy, boys and girls, here it is. Any concerns, anything that you're thinking, do you know what, I can't do that? You've got an opportunity to feedback. And then finally, we can introduce the program as up and running and live. There's a few things we need to do in between. Checking licenses, for example.
Right.
You wouldn't believe how many businesses I work with where I say, do you check to see if somebody has a license? Oh, yes, we do. Could I just ask you how you do that then, please? Yeah. We get a copy of their license, so we don't have a paper counterpart anymore. What do you copy? Well, we photocopy the plastic card. Right, okay. How would you know if that person was A, banned from driving, or had penalty points that exceeded your insurer's threshold? Well, we asked them. Okay, what if they're dishonest because their job's at stake? Yeah. So there's a right and a wrong way to check licenses. So once we've got those sort of things in place, most employees see this as not a hindrance, but actually they're probably quite pleased that their employer cares about their safety.
I was just going to come back to that actually, Adrian, when you're saying about that. That's what I got from that, is that whole communication and that involvement of saying, we care as well, but actually not just saying it, but putting actions in place. Yeah. And I mean, for example, one of the things that we introduce to most businesses is what we call a driver safety, a vehicle safety check. So, and very often the staff will go kicking and screaming, why would we have to do this? We've never done it before. Well, if you think about it, you may be issued with a company car. They may well take care of the tax, the insurance and the servicing, but you are legally responsible once you take it onto the road network. So if you take it out with a duff tyre and you get stopped, that's a £2,500 fine and 3 penalty points that you will get. You can't claim that back off your employer. So therefore, do you not think it's a good idea to check the vehicle on a regular basis? And let's give you a simple tool to be able to do it. Let's give you an app that means you can do it simply. So those are the sort of things that employees then think, oh yeah, okay, I get this. And the first person that needs to be seen doing their vehicle safety checks is the MD, the CEO. Lead by example. So if you're, again, leading on from that as well, what sort of, what is a good culture within an organisation which is relatable to driver safety or driver welfare?
Okay.
How could you, even if you're an employee, say, how would you be able to identify if you're in a good culture which supports driver welfare?
Okay. I'd like to answer that question in two ways. So let's do it first and foremost from the employer's perspective. Let me describe the characteristics of my dream client.
Yeah, cool.
It's where the business owner comes to me and says, Adrian, we care about our staff and we want to do everything possible to keep them safe. And we understand driving is probably one of the most dangerous things we ask them to do. Now, I understand we're supposed to do some stuff. Don't quite know what it is. We don't really have people within the business that can do that. Can you help? That is a dream come true when I hear those words, because I understand then the culture of that organisation. They care. They want to do this stuff. If it's a case of I believe I've got to do some stuff, what's it going to cost, and I hope it's not going to impact on operations, and I don't want to do anything more than we're currently doing, then that's a closed door. Now, from the other side, the culture that is good, that I can identify as good, is if I was to stop a person in the corridor of their workplace, and that employer believes that they have good driver safety, and I ask the employee, what does your business do to keep you safe on the roads when you're driving? If they go, and they pause and they have to think, that says to me, this business haven't got it right. If they say, oh, well, where do I start, Adrian? Well, the first thing I had to do was fill in a form to become an authorised driver. I had to give a DVLA check code so they could check my licence. I had to sign a policy to say I understood it. I saw a copy of their risk assessment. They did an induction on driving for work. They gave me an app. I have to check my vehicle over on a regular basis. I have to do driver training periodically. Those are all the things that say to me, this business has a great culture of safety.
So if, again, though, just going on from that as well, if somebody had a conversation, or you had a different conversation with an employee and they flagged something up which would easily bring alarm bells into your mind about that, these people or this organisation could do with some support here in putting things in place, what would those identifiable or conversations be in which these alarm bells would be raised? What would be the sort of things that would be said, or the sort of comments that would be said, where you would be able to instantly identify that organisation needs some better support?
Now, are we talking from an employee?
An employee who's just having a conversation with you.
Yeah, okay. Let's imagine you're in the works canteen, and you overhear a conversation between two members of staff, and one says, "Have you ever been in the car with John?" "Yeah, I have." "Do you know what? I'm never ever going in the car with him again." "Why is that?" "Oh, well, he ran 2 traffic lights. He's always speeding. He curses, and he was using a mobile phone all the time." That would set alarm bells ringing. So if I was a manager overhearing that conversation, I'd be thinking, oh my goodness me, we're very vulnerable here. What does our policy say about this stuff? Well, if they haven't got one, it's ever likely those people are doing what they're doing. So it's having a framework that they need to work from that's really key.
Okay. And just one last question as well. I'm just going to ask you, Adrian. I mean, all the experience you've had over the 38 years and all the different things that you've seen, experienced and witnessed, what would you say, again, to just break down those barriers in an organisation? And I'm sure you have to do this quite a lot, and you have over the years as well, but if it was somebody even quite new, or even somebody who has used driver safety, like somebody like yourself before, going in as an expert and consulting on everything, what is it that you would say is the ultimate detriment that could come to your organisation if you don't take this seriously?
Okay, so if a business owner was to say to me, "Do I really have to do this stuff?" And I'll say, "Well, you should. It's a legal requirement, but you'll never get found out so long as nobody ever has a bad crash." So if you can guarantee that none of your employees will ever be involved in a serious incident whereby the police or the health and safety executive come asking questions, you'll be fine. Okay. Let's assume that the police do come knocking and the health and safety executive do get involved, and it is discovered that you don't have the appropriate governance over driver safety. In essence, you have failed in your duty of care under the Health and Safety at Work Act. And the potential is that you can end up in court, and there are 3 outcomes here. One of them is there is insufficient evidence and you're not guilty. Happy days. Close shave. The other could be that you're found guilty in failing of your duty of care, and then a fine structure kicks in. Now that fine structure is now based on a percentage of your turnover, not your profit, your turnover. So that's going to hurt. And just to give you an idea, typically starting point fines for health and safety breaches are around 20% and more. So they're really, really going to hurt. If there's a fatality involved in that incident, then that's a far more serious charge. People will have heard of this thing called the corporate manslaughter charge, or in Scotland, it's the Corporate Homicide Act. What that basically means is if a death is a result of a failing for you to have the appropriate measures in place, you are found guilty under the Corporate Manslaughter Act, for which there is a custodial sentence.
Right.
Okay. And that custodial sentence would be given to the controlling mind or minds of that business, regardless of whether they have day-to-day responsibility for health and safety in their business. What they're basically saying is, it's your business, you're the controlling mind, therefore you have to carry the punishment. Nasty stuff. And there are some examples on the web where we can signpost to cases where people have gone to prison.
Right. Adrian, again, I totally get you. It is imperative, and I totally understand where you're coming from with driver safety. But one quick one, I've just got one more quick one, is how often does an organisation actually have to review driver safety? Is it every year, every 2 years?
Yeah.
What is the general sort of term?
Well, quite simply, once your program is set up, you should obviously be monitoring this on a day-by-day basis, but you need to do a proper review of your policies, practice and procedures annually.
Right. So it's every 12 months.
Every 12 months.
Keep going through
and
it
might well be that you've set up a program and a policy. Nothing bad has happened throughout the year. No significant changes with the business. Therefore, your program is good to go for another year. All you need to do is make sure that the version control on those documents reflect the new date. The worst thing you can do is present in court a document that's 8 years out of date. Mm-hmm. So review it annually, change the version control annually.
Adrian, thank you so much for coming here for Business Spotlight. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio.
Likewise.
That's Adrian Hide from Adrian Hide Consultancy here on Business Spotlight with me, Sonya Farrell.
Business Spotlight, shining a light on our local business community. Brought to you by Cross Rhythms and Baba Baboon.